Welcome to the Read It Forward May Book Club discussion. As you know, this month we talked about Emma Straub's All Adults Here. I'm so glad to be seeing you both on Zoom. How is everyone doing?
Well, it has been over a week since the last snowfall here in upstate New York. Lest you think, people of the internet, that we're recording this video super early, uh, no, it snows here in the middle of May. That's just how we live now. But it's sunny today. I've got short sleeves on, so I can't
Such a
complain.
cute shirt. I love
Thank
it.
you.
You have a whole new lease on life, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm fine too. I feel like everyone's just hanging in there. I'm actually in North Carolina now because long story, but my parents are in the process of moving here. So we have a house down here and it's nice. It's warm.
Yeah.
It's kind of rainy today actually. But
It's not
you know,
snowing where you are, though.
no snow. If there was snow, I would be very concerned.
Apocalyptic.
Yeah.
More so than what we're already going through. Well, I'm here in Brooklyn in my apartment.
Holding it down.
Holding it down. I think I'm the last person from my team to still be in New York City. So there's a point of perverse pride. But yeah, I'm enjoying getting out on my bike and biking around the city, which feels really good. And I can't believe it's almost Memorial Day weekend.
No.
The summer is officially beginning in whatever capacity we can enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, what are you guys diving into right now, book wise? Are you taking anything in your virtual beach bag this weekend?
Well, I squeaked under the wire with this book club. I finished the book 6 minutes before we began filming.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
but I finished it. And so I'm technically between books at the moment. So if either of you have recommendations for me for what I should read this weekend, lay them on me.
Well, Emma, you know what I just finished is The Night Circus by Erin
Did
Morgenstern.
you like it, Jess?
Oh, I loved it. And so everyone knows Emma has told me to read it in the past, and I finally did. And it's amazing.
I'm
It's
so
so
glad you liked it.
magical.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, I love it. So that's what I have been up to. And I just finished All Adults Here last night. So
Don't you love when someone takes your book recommendation and then loves it, and you're like, I told you?
feel so good. You're like, I am a goddess when it comes to books.
Totally, a complete and utter goddess. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like a hair flip, hair situation for sure.
What are you reading,
Well,
Ab?
I am about to dive into Diksha Basu's new book called Destination Wedding.
Nice.
I
Nice.
adore Diksha. I think she is such a talented writer, and this is her sophomore novel, which is coming out at the end of June. And she's so talented, and just like her fiction cracks me up, but is also very poignant. It's sort of a modern day comedy of errors, if you will. So you both know how much I loved her first novel, and I can't wait to dive into her second. So that's exciting.
Have you guys been doing any like rereading?
A
I've been
little.
in my TV watching, I've been watching a lot of stuff that I've already seen. I don't really have the capacity for like new surprises right now. And I was thinking yesterday about rereading Maggie Shipstead's seating arrangements, which I really loved when it came out, and I haven't read it since. I
I
might
also
dive
love
into
that
that.
book. I have been rereading some Sloane Crosley short stories.
Oh, nice.
She cracks me up, and I Was Told There'd Be Cake is one of my favorites from all time.
Yeah, I think her essays are incredible.
And I don't have the attention span to read hardly anything. So this is perfect because I can sort of read one before bed and then feel like I've gotten my few pages in at least, but it doesn't feel like a slog.
Well, that was one thing I loved about All Adults here. It was so engrossing. I love Emma Straub's writing. And last week I was reading right before my personal book club. And I ended up being late for our book club Zoom because I got sucked in. And, I had just started the book, so it wasn't like I was even familiar with the characters yet, but I got sucked totally in and lost track of time. But I feel like there's no more legitimate excuse to be late for your book club than I was reading a good book. So
Totally.
Yeah,
And
I was also so like captured by all the characters in this book. So I'm excited to talk about that.
well, would one of you be interested in just recapping a little bit of the plot of All Adults Here? I'm not even going to look at Emma really because
I'm so bad at it.
you're not.
But the book is by Emma Straub, so I feel like Emma should recap the
All
book.
right, I'll try. You guys will help me if I forget the names or anything.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's about the Strick family. Astrid, the matriarch, her 3 adult children, various grandchildren, including 13-year-old Cecilia, and their life in Clapham, which seems to be in the Hudson Valley. I didn't look it up. Is that right? Are they in the Hudson Valley?
I
It
think
is in
so.
the Hudson Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And it's all about their personal lives and their relationships with each other and what it means to be a family and what it means to be truthful about your life and how to try to be a grown-up.
Beautifully done.
That's the best I've got.
Yay.
Beautifully done. So, Jess, will you just recap who our kids are in this family?
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. So there are 3 children in the Strick family. The oldest is named Elliot. And he is very stern and owns his own
Regimented.
business. He's very rigid. He has two kids that are twins and very crazy,
Rambunctious.
rambunctious in a nice way. Then in the middle, we have Porter, who I loved a lot. And she has a goat farm and a business with that. So she makes cheese, which is really cool. I would personally love that. And she is actually expecting her first child. And she got pregnant, through a sperm bank, which I thought was really cool. And so she's, on this journey to becoming a single mom. And then last we have Nikki. Nikki is somewhat of a pothead. He has one daughter named Cecilia and a beautiful sounding French wife. And they reside in Brooklyn, while everyone else lives in the Hudson Valley area. And it's funny because I actually grew up in the Hudson Valley area. So it was cool to read about what life is like there because she actually got it really, really right. Anyway, so those are the 3 strict children. And we learn more about them as the novel goes along.
Yes. And we get Cecilia sort of at the beginning of the book coming to live with her grandmother, Astrid.
Astrid is a hoot, by the way. She is like so funny. And I feel like Emma did such a good job of creating this kind of older woman who is just all over the place. Like I absolutely loved Astrid, even though she's kind of a mess.
Okay, so Astrid often thinks about the role that birth order plays in the personalities of her kids, um, and how their own upbringing or their own childhood experiences really shape the adults they have become. So, do you think that is legit? Does our birth order sort of play a role in terms of who we grow up to be, or is really her parenting what has shaped these kids, do we think?
I would say that so I am one of 3 children, actually,
Okay.
and I am the middle child. So again, I think this is why I related so heavily to Porter. And it is funny because when you have 3 kids in a family, you're bound to have 2 that are closer to each other growing up. So I found that very relatable with Porter and Nikki kind of being close. But I think birth order does matter. And it was said in the book somewhere, I can't remember if it was the kid saying it or Astrid, but that the parenting kind of evolves with each child, right? So you kind of have a different set of parents when you're the first one born, a different one when you're the middle child. And when you're the baby, there's all those stereotypes about like the baby child, getting everything easier and like, parents being less strict. And so, yeah, I think that it does matter because it changes over time, just like everything else.
Emma, you are an only child.
Yeah, so I don't feel qualified to weigh in on this, but I would say I'm a pretty quintessential only child. Compromise, never heard of it.
And I am an eldest child. And I definitely think that in terms of, familial responsibility to my my parents, to my mom, I like to show up. I definitely like to be in charge. Um,
You do?
That's so weird. Tell us more.
tell us more, leader of the book club that no one elected. I so I feel a little bit like, and I like having people think I've got it all together, which I definitely see in Elliot, right? His the property that he buys, he's not really willing to reveal what it's going to be until it's perfect,
Especially to his mother.
especially to his mother. And I definitely feel like that sometimes. There will be times when I will just keep something to myself until I feel like it's ready to share. It's a little more polished. So I'm trying to get better at that. But I felt for Elliot in that moment.
It's
Um,
funny that we identify with you identify with the eldest, I identify with Porter. It's like, it's funny to see that she really did a good job with that.
yeah, I think she nailed it.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the defining incident that occurs on truly the first page. I just have to read the first line because I think it's so amazing. Astrid Strick had never liked Barbara Baker, not for a single day of their 40-year acquaintance. But when Barbara was hit and killed by the empty, speeding school bus at the intersection of Main and Morrison Streets on the eastern side of the town roundabout, Astrid knew that her life had changed, the shock of which was indistinguishable from relief. So, what
This book goes hard.
this book goes hard
Oh,
and
wow.
fast.
Yeah.
Um, but let's talk a little bit about how it changes Astrid to see this woman just mowed down, truly, and how she begins to think about her own mortality and her own life.
Well, I think we start to see the effects almost immediately because she goes straight to see her friend Birdie. And then we very quickly find out that Birdie is not her friend, Birdie is her girlfriend, Birdie is her secret girlfriend. And she's decided that there's no time to waste because what if she had been hit by the bus that hit Barbara? And so she almost immediately comes out to her family and also starts apologizing to her children for ways that she believes she has wronged them, that she's been carrying around for much of her life.
I think that you always think in life that you'll have a chance to say whatever it is that you want to say. So you don't have to do it right now. And then when Astrid saw Barbara get hit by that bus, she was like, wait, okay, this, maybe there isn't time and maybe I need to say this all now. And also, like, I don't know, the fact that she witnessed it from like across the street made it way more intense. And the fact that she knew Barbara for 40 years, even if she didn't exactly like her too much, um, there's a person like that's always there in your life who you might not be closest with, but they've just kind of always existed with you.
A
And then in a split,
constant.
yes. And then in a split second, they're gone. And I can imagine that that would be pretty like shaking. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I guess it just made Astrid realize that she needs to tell her truths and tell them now before something like that happens. Well, maybe not like that, but
But that it could.
but that it could.
That
Exactly.
anything could happen at any moment.
Yeah.
And I feel like it rattles the sort of perfect life that Astrid has created for herself, and gives her that shake that I think actually maybe a lot of us are experiencing right now with this virus, that our health and our long life is not a guarantee. And that if there are conversations that you should be having with your family and your friends and your loved ones, have them today. And I have lost a parent and definitely felt the urgency of having those conversations before it was too late. And I think for me, that was a really poignant shaping device for this novel, which I think works really effectively. And I like that the book is school bus yellow, so that anytime you pick it up, you're sort of reminded of the urgency of the situation that Astrid is feeling. So I want to talk. Oh, go ahead, Emma.
I was just going to say, because I didn't have a physical copy of the book, I hadn't thought about that, but I like it a lot.
Me
It's
too.
been it's been sitting on my coffee table and just reminding me.
I mean, not to be shallow, but also it's such a beautiful book.
It really is. It's just very stunning, and I think the cover belies the amazing writing that's inside, which I love when that
You
happens.
can judge it by its cover.
You absolutely can. So why do we think, we've just touched on why Astrid tells her kids about her relationship with Birdie, um, when she does, but why do we think she's kept it a secret for so long? And do you think, like, how do we feel about the reaction of the kids? Do they accept Birdie into the family? Jess, do you have any thoughts on Birdie, who I
I
love?
love her. I absolutely love her so much. I think that Astrid probably wanted to keep it a secret because she was worried about, what other people would say. I think it's hard for people who are, you know, not one way or the other and kind of in between, into men and women, to come out to people because people automatically want to put you in a box and like, oh, but you were married to a man, so how is this even possible? And maybe she just didn't want to deal with all of that, with coming out to people. It's harder when you're like in this in between, I think. And then also, like, she is very much like a perfect person, or she tries to portray herself as perfect, and maybe she was worried that this would like somehow ruin that. She's also older. So, she grew up in a time where that probably wasn't okay. And, you know, also moving on from a spouse that has passed is hard in itself, I'm sure.
Mhm.
So I'm sure there were a lot of reasons. But overall, I think that her children did react very like positively to the whole thing. Except Elliot, who was a little more like, tense about the whole situation. But he's like that most of the novels.
He's like
But the
that.
others were kind of like, hey, you seem really happy. And I think that that was really great.
Yeah, it was nice to see a family who ultimately all just wanted the best for each other. While there are dysfunctional elements to their relationships, as I think there are with all families, one thing that I really love about all of Emma Straub's books is that um, I can expect, if not a happy ending in all of her books, at least a hopeful ending. I just always feel like I'm in very good hands with her writing. Um, so even when many of these characters were at odds, I didn't find it stressful the way I might have otherwise, because I know Emma's always going to steer the ship toward a peaceful resolution.
And in many ways, I really loved the partnership of Astrid and Bertie. As we look at the partners in the novel, we have Elliot and Wendy, which I wouldn't elect to be in a room with the two of them for very long. We have Nikki and Juliet, also better, but not super great. We have Astrid and Bertie, who I enjoyed their frank, honest conversations with one another. And then we almost have a little bit of a partnership of Porter leaning on her friend Rachel, right? It's not necessarily a romantic relationship at all, but they get certain aspects of partnership from one another, which I really enjoyed for them. Like, a
Yeah.
partnership can look different in all sorts of ways. So, what did you
Yeah.
think about the relationships, the partnerships in this novel, Emma?
Well, one thing that I liked was that we saw the relationships and partnerships from several different points of view, um, which gave kind of a more nuance to them. So, like you said, especially at first glance, Elliot and Wendy seem like a very dysfunctional couple who you wouldn't want to spend time with, who don't seem to want to spend time with each other. But then as you go through more and more layers, you hear things from Elliot's perspective, you hear things from Wendy's perspective, they start to work together. You see all the other characters kind of shifting their understanding of what that partnership is like. And I think by the end of the book, I had an appreciation for all of the different partnerships, and I think there's even a section where Astrid says that she can see both her failings as a parent, but also her triumphs as a parent in the partners that her children choose for themselves, who might not be exactly who Astrid would have picked, but have complementary personalities to kind of even them out.
Yeah.
So there's a nice way
Yeah.
of looking at it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like there's no one like gold standard for a relationship. So I appreciated seeing like all of these kinds of relationships that work in some ways, and don't in others, but ultimately these people stick together. And so I don't know, it felt very real to me. And I think that's what I loved about this whole book is just like all of the relationships between, you know, spouses and friends and siblings and parents, like it was all real, and I think that's what made it so good.
One of the relationships I love that we have to talk about before we end is Cecilia and August, and August's transition into being the young woman that she has always felt that she was. So, talk a little bit about those two and about what they understand as teenagers that maybe the adult characters in the book don't necessarily get.
I You go first, Emma. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, isn't that like the primary kind of characteristic of teenagers to think about all the things that they understand that their parents don't understand? I love the
Parents
way
just don't understand.
parents just don't understand. I know this has just been like an Emma Straub love fest for me, but I love the way she writes teenagers. Um, I think she does a really good job of not forgetting what it is like to be that age when everything is heightened. Um, and I loved the development of the friendship between Cecilia and Robin and how Cecilia has come to Clapham because at her school in Brooklyn, her best friend had met a guy online who pretended to be a high schooler, and it was already a big enough age difference that it was creepy that he was contacting her if he was a high schooler. But then he was clearly an adult man. And Cecilia told her parents, told the friend's parents, told the school to get her friend out of this situation. And the reaction from her friend um, was extremely negative. So her parents sent her to Clapham to kind of get her out of a bad situation where she was being bullied for doing something that honestly is very brave. And I think that friend 10 years from now is going to be finding Cecilia online or, wherever and apologizing.
Mhm.
Or I hope so anyway.
Yeah.
I think it's the kind of thing that seems unforgivable as a child, and then later on you realize, oh, actually that person saved you from something that is actually unforgivable.
Yeah.
But anyway, that means Cecilia is coming into her friendship with Robin very trepidatious about the difference between, I think how she puts it is the difference between privacy and secrecy. And I think she navigates that with a lot of grace for a 13-year-old. And it's nice to see her, even though she's been burnt by a close friendship like that before, really bond with Robin and establish what at least she believes is going to be a lifelong friendship, which I think is kind of how, like, kind of follows the path of how Porter and Rachel became lifelong friends.
Mhm.
Yes, I think that Cecilia's moral compass is like right on. Like she's such a good hearted teenager. And I feel like if more teenagers had Cecilia as a friend, they'd probably be so well off. I think like at the core of this novel, like what Emma Straub is trying to get across is that adults don't have all the answers and they don't know everything and they make mistakes. And sometimes you do have to look to teenagers and children and ask them what they think about things because like often yeah they'll say probably a lot of gibberish and like not not great things, but there is something to be said about how they feel about the world. And so I like that Robin's like feelings on things and Cecilia's feelings on things were um touched on in this book.
When Robin takes her place at the top of the float, I was sobbing in such a good way. It was such a moment of
It's so beautiful.
redemption, and yeah. And
And
I love I love Porter sleeping with this guy that she shouldn't be sleeping with and making active mistakes, but we see her evolve and learn. And I think, Jess, you're spot on that Emma Straub does that really, really well, showing people's flaws.
Yeah. And one of my favorite parts of the book is at the end, when Astrid is like looking at her three children from behind and they're all sitting near each other and she looks at them and she's like, they all have the same brown hair, the same bend in their back. And you know what? Like, what I've done couldn't be too bad because look at them now. And I thought that was just so beautiful. Um, and a great way to say, like, look, we make mistakes, but everyone does. And as long as, the end result is somewhat okay, then that's life. Yeah.
Well, I think this was so wonderful to get to discuss this book with you guys today. It's a really powerful read, and I'm so glad reading it sort of has kicked off my summer season of reading. Um, but thank you both for being here, and thank you all at home for reading along with us. And don't forget to vote for our June book club pick. And we'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye.